Good evening, everybody. Before we get started tonight, I'd like to welcome Dr. Brent Ward from Birmingham United Methodist Church to lead us in our invocation.
Please join me in bowing our heads. Lord, tonight we remember the words of the psalmist when he said, "The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof." And we give thanks, Lord, for the fullness, the many resources, the abundance of Milton, Georgia. We give thanks, Lord, for the firemen and police and first responders who often put themselves in harm's way for the sake of others. We give thanks, Lord, for the administration and leadership who guides our community towards hope and sustains us through change and challenge. We give thanks, Lord, for the longtime residents, those who've been here for years and those who just moved here today. We give thanks for the businesses who grew up here, for those yet to come. Lord, we give thanks for the public and private schools, for the teachers and administration, for the students and their families. Lord, we give thanks for the land that defines our environment and for the incredible beauty that you've given us. And finally, Lord, we give thanks for the abundance of your grace and of your love that we know in this place that we call Milton, Georgia. May we serve you faithfully and abundantly here, for the earth is yours, Lord, and the fullness thereof. In the name of Jesus Christ do I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. Okay, I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Milton City Council for Wednesday, February 22nd, 2017 to order. Sudi, if you'll please make general announcements and call the roll.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll be happy to call roll for the February 22nd, 2017 regular meeting. I would like to remind those in attendance to please silence all cell phones at this time. Those attending the meeting who would like to provide public comment either during the public hearing or during the call for public comment, you are required to complete a public comment card prior to speaking on the item. There is no public comment for consent agenda items or items under first presentation. Those called to speak will be taken in the order that the speaker cards are received by the city clerk prior to the beginning of tonight's meeting. All speakers will identify themselves by name, address, and organization. The City Council may allow public comment on either an agenda item or general public comment from a representative of such an organized group or association, provided that the individual has filed a notarized affidavit that they have the authority to speak on behalf of the organization on a form provided by the city clerk prior to the agenda item being called. Demonstration of any sort within the chamber is prohibited, so please refrain from any applause, cheering, booing, outbursts, or dialogue with any person speaking. Anyone in violation will be asked to leave. As I call roll this evening, please confirm your attendance. Mayor Joe Lockwood.
Here.
Councilmember Karen Thurman.
Here.
Councilmember Matt Koontz.
Here.
Councilmember Bill Lusk.
Here.
Councilmember Rick Morick.
Here.
And for the record, Councilmember Joe Longoria and Councilmember Bert Hewitt are absent. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everybody. I want to welcome you here to our City Council meeting. Also, I just want to make a statement. There was, and I have not read the article, but I think there was a statement in the paper that talked about the crabapple placemaking plan and that it was coming before City Council, which that is not correct. It is not coming before City Council, in case anybody here was coming to talk about that. And I had previously directed staff, which they're in the process of. We want to have some more public communication and have the public take a look at that plan a couple of times more before it comes before council. So just in case there's anybody here that came to address that, I want to let you know there was a mistake in the paper, and that was not coming before us tonight. So, Sudi, if you will please call the next item.
The next item is approval of the meeting agenda, agenda item number 17044.
Okay. I'd like to add an executive session to discuss land acquisition. Is there anything else anybody wants to add or discuss on the agenda? Staff? Okay. I'll open up for a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'd make motion that we accept the agenda with the addition of an executive session for land acquisition.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion for approval, Councilmember Morrig, with the addition of executive session to discuss land acquisition, and a second from Councilmember Thurman. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any against? That passes unanimous. Okay, Tootie, if you will please sound the next item.
The next item is to administer the oath of office to Rich Austin, Chief of Police. Mayor Joe Lockwood.
Okay, and it's a pleasure tonight for me to, I guess we could call this a formal welcome for our new police chief, Rich Austin. Been on the job now about a month now, and we're really excited. And I'll step forward and ask Rich to, or Chief Austin, to come up, and we'll swear him in. But then I'd like to ask his wife Claire and daughter Ashley to come up and join us after that to actually pin the badge, and then we'll ask council to come join us for a picture after that. You would raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Rich Austin,
I, Rich Austin,
do solemnly swear and affirm
do solemnly swear and affirm
that I will faithfully perform the duties
that I will faithfully perform the duties
of police chief of this city,
of police chief of this city,
and I will support and defend
and I will support and defend
the charter thereof,
the charter thereof,
as well as the Constitution
as well as the Constitution
and the laws of the state of Georgia
and the laws of the state of Georgia
and of the United States of America.
and of the United States of America.
Congratulate and welcome you here. Sign here. All right. Our next item is public comment. Do we have any public comment tonight, Sudie?
We do not, sir.
Okay. So we'll move on to the consent agenda. Sudie, if you'll please read the items.
Our first item is approval of the January 30th, 2017 regular city council meeting minutes, agenda item number 17045. Next is approval of the February 6th, 2017 regular city council meeting minutes, agenda item number 17046. Our third consent agenda item, approval of the financial statements for the period ending December 2016, agenda item number 17047. Next, approval of the financial statements for the period ending January 2017, agenda item number 17048. Next, approval of a Parks and Recreation Department facility use agreement and addendums between the City of Milton and Core Physique, agenda item number 17049. Our sixth consent agenda item this evening is approval of a professional services agreement between the City of Milton and Tennell Spangler and Associates, Inc. for the development of the Unified Development Code, agenda item number 17050. Our seventh and final consent agenda item this evening is approval of the following subdivision plat. Brickmont, Land Lot 1048, Webb Road, minor plat, combined 2 lots, 2.016 total acres, 0.49 lots per acre. Agenda item number 17-051.
Okay.
Mayor, I'll move to approve the consent agenda as prepared by staff.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second for approval. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Sudie, our next items are under reports and presentations. If you'll please call the item.
This is a proclamation recognizing Arbor Day being presented by Mayor Joe Lockwood.
Okay. On April 17th, to commemorate Arbor Day in Georgia, the City of Milton, on February 17th, planted a Patty Fay Deodar cedar at Broadwell Pavilion. The City of Milton recognizes that trees represent life and thus improve the quality of living for our community. We are able to enjoy the cooling effect and lush vegetation that trees provide us during the summer months, the artistic painted tapestry displayed in the fall, the interesting and unique form of trees we see in the winter, and the colorful emergence of spring flowering trees soon to be enjoyed. We not only celebrate our trees on Arbor Day, we celebrate our future, leaving a legacy of clean air, beauty, good stewardship for generations to come. So today I am honored to read this and present a proclamation for Arbor Day. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to a Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be put aside for planting trees. And whereas this holiday called Arbor Day was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska, and Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world. Whereas trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce life-giving oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, beautify our community, and are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. And whereas the City of Milton has been recognized for the 8th year in a row as a Tree City USA community by Georgia Forestry Commission. Now therefore, we, the Mayor and City Council of the City of Milton, hereby recognize and proclaim for the year 2017, February 7th as Arbor Day, and urge all citizens to celebrate Arbor Day and to support efforts to protect our trees, our environment, and make Milton an even greater place to work and raise a family. And that's given under my hand and the seal of the City of Milton, Georgia on the 22nd day of February 2017. It's just interesting, and I kind of learned this going through the process with Mark Law, and as I started out with in 1872, Sterling Morton proposed this, and all the trees that were planted in Nebraska. And I know a lot of times now we concentrate on the specimen trees and the big trees that are 100 years old, 200 years old, which are important to save. But also we have to think about the seedlings and the small trees that we plant that 200 years from now, people will enjoy, and will be here to beautify the earth and help. So it's exciting to not only save the trees, but also to plant new ones, so for our future generations. With this, I would like to ask, we've got some guys here, some scouts that I'd like to come up and help accept that, as well as Kathy, because Mark Law is not here. Is there any other staff members that would be appropriate? You guys, can you come on up here?
Johnny F. will see. He ought to be recognized.
You ought to be recognized. Let's go down there.
Oh, yeah. Come on, guys. Sorry, I didn't see you there.
Are we supposed to go down?
Thanks, guys. Thanks very much for being here. Okay, our next item is first presentation. Sudi, if you'd please sound that item.
This item is consideration of an ordinance of the City of Milton, Georgia, to revise the city's procurement policy with respect to engineering and design related services in federally funded road construction projects, to provide for the repeal of conflicting ordinances, to provide an effective date, and for other lawful purposes. Agenda item number 17052.
Okay. Do I have a motion on the first presentation?
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the first presentation as read.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Coons, second by Councilmember Thurman for the first presentation. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Okay, next we'll move to our public hearing, Sudi.
Our first item is consideration of the issuance of an alcohol beverage license to HDRA LLC, doing business as Ichiban Steak and Sushi, 5306 Windward Parkway, Milton, Georgia, 3004. Agenda item number 17053, Ms. Bernadette Harville.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is a simple name change, and the applicant has complied with all of our requirements, and Finance is recommending approval.
Okay, do we have any public comment on this?
We do not, sir.
Okay, I'll close the public hearing on it. And is there any questions for council, Bernadette? Obviously, it's an existing business.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Same place, same name.
Okay, all right. I'll open up for a motion.
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve agenda item number 17-053.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Thurman, second by Councilmember Coons. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimous. Okay, we'll move on to our next public hearing item. Sudi, if you'll please call that item.
The next item is consideration of the issuance of an alcohol beverage license to Cyrus Trading Investment LLC, doing business as I Love New York Pizza, 980 Birmingham Road, Milton, Georgia, 3004. Agenda item number 17054, Ms. Bernadette Harville.
This evening, we're actually going to have to remove this agenda item for administrative withdrawal. We're working with city attorney to look at citizenship rights and allowing alcohol beverage sales in the city of Milton.
Okay, so I guess, is there any public comment on this item?
There is not, sir.
Okay, I'll close the public hearing. Ken, I guess we just need to take a motion or a vote on.
Are we withdrawing it or
withdraw.
deferring it?
Yeah, not,
defer.
Deferral.
just
Defer.
defer. I think it's just a deferral, so I think if we could just postpone it to a date certain, perhaps sometime in March.
March 6th.
Okay.
Okay, do I have a
20th.
motion to defer until March 6th?
March 20th.
March 20th, so.
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we defer agenda item number 17-054 to the March 20th city council meeting.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Coons, second by, I think, Councilmember Lusk, and third by Councilmember Moore. So, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bernadette. All right, so moving on to our zoning agenda. City, will you please read the zoning rules and sound the item?
At the second regularly scheduled meeting of the month, the mayor and city council consider a zoning agenda. These items include rezoning petitions, modifications of zoning, use permits, and associated concurrent variances, in addition to ordinances, resolutions, and text amendments. I would like to acquaint you with some of the rules and procedures for this meeting. The applicant and all those speaking in support of an application will be allowed a total of 10 minutes to present the petition. The applicant may choose to save some of the time for rebuttal following the presentation by the opposition. Since the burden of proof is upon the applicant will be allowed to make closing remarks provided time remains with the allotted time. Those called to speak will be taken in the order that the speaker cards are received by the city clerk prior to the beginning of tonight's meeting. If you are speaking on behalf of a group or organization, an affidavit must accompany your public comment card. Before beginning your presentation or comment, please identify yourself by name, address, and organization if applicable. Our zoning item this evening is consideration of RZ 17-01, text amendment to AG1 Agricultural District Development Standards in Section 64-416 of Chapter 64 of the Zoning Ordinance. Agenda item number 17039. First presentation was heard at the February 6th City Council meeting. Ms. Kathy Fields.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. By way of background, the purpose of this text amendment is to clarify the language concerning the applicability of architectural review for minor subdivisions and single lots of record. If you remember, a few months ago, you did remove minor subdivisions and single-family lots from the rural viewshed requirements. However, you did state that you wanted to continue with the architectural review of structures on exterior streets within minor subdivisions or individual lots. The purpose of this text amendment is just to clarify that language, to make it very clear that structures on exterior streets are not exempt as they are for the rural viewshed requirements. The architectural reviews requirements are still in place. So that's essentially what this text amendment does. I would like to say that the Planning Commission recommended approval of this amendment as proposed by staff, but in addition, they wanted me to bring to your attention that they still believe that large estate lots should be required to meet the rural viewshed requirements, even when they're in a minor subdivision or even a single family lot, because if they're large estate lots, they certainly would impact the rural viewshed. So they wanted me to bring that point to you tonight, even though it's really not the subject of our text amendment, but they wanted me to pass that along. So I am willing to answer any questions. On the last page of the text amendment, you do see the additional language that we added that requires an architectural review process as well as this 360-degree architecture review for those structures within these minor subdivisions or single-family lots of record.
Okay. Do we have any public comment, Sudi?
We do not, sir.
Okay, I'll close the hearing on that and then open up for questions. Bill, did you have a question?
Yes. Kathy, in the last item you added here in I.2, did we talk at that time when we did review this of a requirement for 360-degree architectural design on structures?
Yeah, that's part of what we always include in there, so that it's front and back sides, obviously. Yes.
Anybody comments on that or thoughts on that?
That's standard language that we use.
And I understand the reasoning behind it, but at the same time, I hate to feel like we're getting to be heavy-handed. And that's always been my fear, is that for government, for our city government to become too heavy-handed. I think it's important that the side facing the streets that are part of our rural viewshed are appropriate, but I'm not sure that we need to tell people what they need to do on the other three sides. I mean, that's their own personal preference. So, I mean, And is there any cost to the resident to have the city architect look over?
No, there's certainly no cost, and the architect really is, in my memory, the architect has never not been able to work out an acceptable design.
And I would say that it seems like most of the time they're, at first there may be a difference, and then they seem to work together and come up to where the homeowner's happier. But, and I'll open up any more comments on that subject Karen talked about. I would agree that, again, I feel it's our job to try to protect our public and the views, the public views as much as possible. But again, we're getting too much into people's private, spending their money and whatnot on their private homes and property. So I would tend to, if we wanted to kind of look at that, I would certainly support looking at, maybe just from the front, but see what other folks say.
Just, Kathy, just a quick question. So the currently, right now, as it is, they're building according to our current standards, but they're not necessarily having to have the requirement of architectural review, although we offer it if they ever ask for it. Is that how?
Well, if it's over a minor, if it's oversized, if it's larger than a minor subdivision, which means anything of 4 lots or more, we do already have in place very clearly the architectural review.
Right.
On exterior streets, not on interior streets.
But smaller lots or smaller, 3 acres or less, essentially.
It was not clear that, and I believe from the discussion that we had the last time, is that you wanted to delete the rural view shed requirements, but leave in place the architectural review standards. And what this attempts to do, purports to do, is to clarify that and make it clear that those are still in place.
Gotcha.
Is there a way to word it that, it goes under the architectural review, but to not have it quite so heavy-handed? I mean, I don't know why we have to really say 360 degree. I mean, if we just deleted that out and just said it was architectural review.
Or architectural review from the street side or the public view.
I mean, Bob usually has some great. I mean, with my house, he had some great ideas. I was very happy that we offer that service, and
right.
he had some wonderful suggestions. But everybody has their own personal taste in what they like style-wise for a house, and I would hate to tell somebody, well, especially if their house is not facing a street, a rural viewshed street, that they couldn't build what they wanted because we didn't care for it. Maybe I wish
and
somebody
there's certainly no
told me
reason
on that.
why the city architect couldn't look at all of it and offer suggestions, but I think as far as our jurisdiction, I'd prefer to see it from the public view. But again, that depends on the rest of the council here.
I'd be in support of that too. I just think, because that's what we're trying to protect versus force them to go to a formal review. Bob may have good, like I said, have good ideas, the architect, and giving them, but as far as requiring that and us stipulating changes on the backside, I don't think that's required.
Bill?
Well, this is a revision that would obviously stay in the code from now on. I'm pretty familiar with Bob's experience and how he aids design of different structures here, but I guess once Bob is gone, after he retires.
Is that allowed?
No insider information. I'd be concerned that, like Karen says, that it'd be a heavy-handed policy or procedure, and to dictate materials in design 360 degrees around a house. It could impact the homeowners or home builders' budget. So I wouldn't want to adversely affect their budget for the sake of having some strange architectural features on the back side of the house that nobody would see.
Okay, so
That'd be-
Bill
yeah.
agrees too. So
Yeah.
it
Yeah,
sounds
I
pretty
think-
unanimous here. So, but yeah, I guess we can make those, you can make those changes.
Sure. Ken, can you write some language up, or are you prepared to write some language up?
what
to
I'm
it?
hearing thus far is in I-2, is the council of the mind that I-2 should then read simply that these structures shall meet the intent of section 64.1151 and take out the be designed with the 360 altogether. Just skip over that part.
Yeah, do we need to
So-
clarify that it's basically
Just the
street
front
view?
view.
You know, the view from the public right of way?
Yeah, I think we would like to put in something that says the
Street view.
elevation, the street elevation.
Because it could, you know, it could be on a corner, or it could be, you know,
You
a
might be
house
looking
that's
at the
turned a
back.
little bit or something like that,
Yeah.
so.
With a review of the street elevation architecture, the exterior street elevation architecture, something
Yeah, I think
along those
something like
lines.
that would,
Okay, that works.
so. Okay. Questions for Kathy?
I'll take a stab at this, yeah. So, Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve agenda item number 17-039 with the change that section, section I-2 be changed to these structures shall be designed with street elevation architecture and shall meet the intent of section 64-1151. Is that good?
It is, Councilmember Coons, and I would ask you one more thing, it's purely housekeeping. In I-1, if you'll read it with me, I-1, an architectural review process is required.
I-1
think-
architectural review
I think an
process.
and is needed between
And.
required and shall.
Right.
And so put an and between required and shall in section I-1.
Second.
Perfect.
Okay. All right, so I've got a motion as read into the record by Councilmember Coons, and I believe, did you second that? Is that
Yeah,
what you were saying?
second.
A second from Councilmember Moore. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimous, City. Okay, we don't have any items under unfinished business, so we'll move on to new business. Sudi, if you'll please call the next item.
Next item is consideration of a resolution to create the Milton Green Space Advisory Committee, agenda item number 17-055. I do have one public comment card.
Okay, let's see, Kathleen Johnson is going to present this. Do we want to take public comment though before, or we can do either one? If the council's okay, we can go ahead and ask for the public comment.
I'm okay with that.
Okay.
And that comes from Mr. Tim Becker.
Tim Becker, 15625 Canterbury Chase, Milton, Georgia. Good evening, Council. I am generally in support of the proposed ordinance. However, I strongly recommend that several changes be made to ensure the integrity and transparency of the process. $25 million is a lot of money, and it is sure to attract special interests that will attempt to influence the expenditure of funds to their own enrichment. We cannot allow the politicizing and manipulation of this important process. We saw some jockeying for position and other questionable behaviors even before the bond was passed. I recommend the following changes to the ordinance. 1, all public meetings be video streamed and recorded. 2, the Green Space Committee should be bound by rules similar to Milton's quasi-judicial committees. Number 3, the promotion of specific properties by council members should be explicitly prohibited. 4, generally speaking, the involvement of council members should be limited to a strictly judicial role. Council members should be explicitly prohibited from speaking with individual green space board members, landowners, staff, other than the city manager, technical advisors, etc., concerning any and all aspects of land acquisition. Council needs to limit its involvement to serving as an independent panel of judges that makes decisions based purely on the merits of the issue. Number 5, a particularly strict set of recusal rules should be contemplated for this process that exceeds Milton's currently low threshold for conflict of interest. I base these comments on my observations of the CSO process and also the Hopewell Road subdivision platting revision. I want to remind Council that citizens will be watching this process very closely. We will get our first clue about the integrity of this process based on Council members' nominations for the Green Space Committee. Please honor your citizens with a clean and rigorous process that only considers the interest of the entirety of the citizens that you represent. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Sudie, do we have any more public comment?
That's all, sir.
Okay. Kathleen?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. I have for you a resolution for your consideration for the creation of the Milton Green Space Advisory Committee. I believe you have the resolution in front of you. I wanted to make a couple of comments about the resolution, if you don't mind me pointing some things out. The first part of it, with all the whereas, is kind of the history of how we got to creating the advisory committee. The first resolution is the creation, which is basically the mission and the purpose of the committee. That's what that paragraph discusses. The second, number 2, under membership. Pursuant to the advice of our legal counsel and the charter, Article 4, Section 4.11, relates to the formation of boards, city boards. And that's where many of these 2A through M come from, is that part of the charter. Now, I know we discussed in 2 other meetings, work session, the formation of this committee, and we talked about a different way of doing it than we had done other committees, and we discussed that at those 2 meetings. So I did want to point this out to you to look over, and letter, let's see, C, when it says recommendations to the MGAC members shall be received based on an open nomination process by Milton citizens, and that would refer to the application that we will get to after the resolution. We can discuss that. Letter D, the mayor and each city council member shall be entitled to nominate a single MGAC member from the pool of recommended citizens. So is sort of the formal process, and I think how the council members and the council gets to those nominations is something that the council can decide and discuss, and if they are able to discuss it in an executive session, as Jay points out, city council may consider appointments in executive session. So I know it's not exactly the way we talked about it before, but I think within the parameters of this charter, we can still do it. You all can still nominate the way to have the openness to nominate from that pool of applications within the city charter. Let's see. Also, the charter says that there is no requirement that a member of the committee reside in the district of the council member that nominates that member. I just wanted to point that out. So if there's someone, it doesn't have to be right in the district of that council member. Let's see. Also, under letter L, the Open Meetings Act, according to the council, the Open Meeting Act includes the ability to discuss land acquisitions and discussions in executive session, because I know there was some concern about the private land acquisition discussions that would go on before the approval of a purchase or an acquisition. So I think that would be covered by that section. And then the governance goes to, number 3, goes to the basic requirements of the members. The term is number 4. says that it shall be coterminous with the term of the city council member that nominated the member. And then the conduct of business talks about how often they will meet. So I wanted to just open it up if you all have any questions for me about anything in the resolution or comments.
Any questions or comments? Karen?
I just have a couple comments. Number one, it's very important that this board is comprised of people who can all work together. They've had $25 million to spend. That's a lot of money. So we want to make sure that we have a board that's very cohesive. And if you're changing members possibly every 2 years, that can make it really difficult to have a cohesive board when people are going on and off. I had thrown out that we, and I don't know how many people you have that have expressed an interest in even being on this board, that, we don't have to have 7 people. If we had 5 people, and if you put forward a slate of the 10 best candidates, and all of us voted on the 5 that we felt like were the best out of those 10, whoever got the most votes would be on the committee, just so that you know that you've got a group that the majority of the council supported them, rather than just one individual council member appointing them. Because like I said, I think it's just, this committee is so important that they all work together, and that the committee not change every couple years.
I will say under number 4 term, there is also members may be appointed to serve an unlimited number of terms. So that's an option there.
Yeah, but if a new council person comes on, then they may want to appoint somebody different that may not, I just think that could be a mistake if we have a way of removing somebody that is not working out or is not able to attend meetings. It doesn't seem like we want to have that kind of turnover possibly in this board that's got this much money to spend.
Okay. Rick?
Yeah, and then to basically second what Karen was saying, I think it's important when we first talked about putting together this committee, we weren't really looking at individually trying to nominate. We were going to have an open process, and then you guys would do the vetting. And I think I'm more comfortable with you coming forward after we got the applications, or staff coming forward with, here's who we think are the top candidates, and then we as a council in an executive session take a look at it versus having it tied directly to a council person.
And maybe Ken could
and let me
discuss
say this,
that.
because I know we did talk about that, and I agreed with that too, but I know kind of turned it over to staff to look into it. So if you guys want to
Let me
step in for a second.
take a crack at that,
Throw
because
a
I
water
think
on
that
it.
a lot of the revisions that were made to the original draft are more from me, based upon Section 411 of your charter. So what Section 411 provides is that the council shall create by ordinance such boards, commissions, and authorities to fulfill any investigative, quasi-judicial, or quasi-legislative function the city council deems necessary. It's the closest sort of authority by which you create sub-entities to operate. And so it sort of sets forth then the game plan. Now, we're not creating this by ordinance. As you can see, we're creating it by resolution, because this isn't an entity that's got quasi-judicial power, et cetera, et cetera. However, this is the best template in your charter for how you guys create something. If you all want to defer from that and deviate from it, I don't know that would be necessarily illegal. And I mean that. So, I mean, I'm suggesting you probably have the latitude to do it, because it's not performing these quasi-judicial and quasi-legislative functions that the charter anticipates. But my recommendation is that you do things the same for all of your various entities that you all create. So that's why I built it the way I built it. If that's not where the council wants to be, I'd probably need to go and sort of rip this up a little bit.
Is there a way to do it? I understand the thought of doing a quote slate or whatever, but maybe,
Right.
The council, the way you've got it set up where the council nominates someone from the pool, the qualified pool, but then vote on it as a slate there, so that council's cohesive on it, or
That, again,
So the way it was currently designed is, for argument's sake, say we get 30 applications. It'll be reviewed by staff per your directions to make sure that that the people have the individual KSAs that you're looking for. And then we would forward, let's say, out of that 30, the 20 to you, from which you would choose your group.
My problem is if you've got a council member choosing an appointee, it makes it harder to have politics totally out of it than if you had a whole group that were appointed by all of us. Right. And then it wasn't like you had a council member that had an appointee. It's to me, this group, because it is so different, I want all politics out of this group. They need to be making their decisions based strictly on their professional opinions. And I mean that they need to be professionals. They need to understand this stuff. And so, I just would like to find a way to make sure that there is no politics involved. If you got a person worried about, are they going to get reappointed if somebody doesn't run for office or whatever, you're setting it up for politics to come into the equation.
I think if the council looked at the slate and winnowed it down to 7, and then we just simply had almost like a blind nomination process that one of you just nominates one and there's no relationship between it being your individual selection, but we're just following the language of the charter without any sort of affiliation between it being yours. You're nominating the person because, well, that's the way the resolution reads, but they're by no means Councilmember Thurman's appointee. You're simply doing the nomination.
Why can't we just nominate the slate, though? I mean, Milton Groves Green just has they're not an individual nominee, and our Milton Disability Awareness Committee, they're not individual appointees. I would prefer us not to have individual appointees. I prefer us to all agree on the best 7 candidates, and they be appointed by the council.
And I think on the back end of it, if there's a concern, we do, you put the rights in here where we have the ability as a council to actually remove someone from that if we think that there is non-performing or if there's an issue.
Right.
That would be, I think, the only time we'd really be concerned. But looking at what Karen's saying, I'd like to see if we could have a collective, here's the 7 that represent the city in this area versus my appointee or Karen's appointee or Joe's appointee, because really it's a function they're trying to perform versus an appointee, and we have already kind of broken it apart from saying it has to be tied directly to your own district.
Okay. Well, how are we going to winnow it down from a pool of 30 to 7?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Who's going to pick this?
Well, I would think staff would whittle it down from a pool of 30 to maybe 15, and if we can discuss them in executive session, we ought to be able to whittle it down.
Work together.
I'd support that.
Yeah, I want to make sure we have no politics involved in this.
Well,
and if you have it, if I appoint somebody and then my term's up, then does that person have to get reappointed by the next person?
Yes,
it just.
that's the way the way it reads, right?
And I don't like that.
Well, there's a point because we do have some boards that kind of get watered down after a while. Lack of participation. The reality to this point, I don't know if we blend this or not, but I just feel like you got to bring it. If we really want this to be, which I think we all do, non-political. It's almost like it needs to be somebody from outside the city that's professional, and you hire a consultant that has no ties or whatever to it to make the impartial decision. So,
well, if that's the way the council wants to go, I'll need to probably put some language in here making sure it's clear that this is not a 4.11 board under your charter.
Yeah.
I'm even just throwing out, maybe we even have a couple of members or a separate, couple advisors on the board that are maybe not even Milton citizens, and have, there's no connection other than their professional opinion. Right. That just like you'd hire an outside lawyer or something with a fresh set of eyes that has no relation but can give the best professional advice on it. But
we've had some other committees as well, which like the Milton Arts Committee or the Equestrian Committee. Even when we've had, as council members, we've had the right to be able to select people or recommend people for that. But also, staff has done a good job of bringing some ideas to us of people that might be interested in serving on those committees, because those are at-large committees as well, which is similar to this. Even with, I think those are good because those are people that showed an interest in being on that, had some qualifications of which we wanted as well. Even though we were appointed, it wasn't necessarily a bad thing, I think, in those appointments that we were doing. But I understand where you're coming from on that. I just think that we need to, I think there's a way we can reach that compromise. What I'm thinking, what Joe had said was, there's on those committees there are non-voting members as well who might help the board, if you will, but they just don't vote also. And so those could be those people that would be consultants or people outside the city too for additional expertise. But that doesn't need to be written in there, I guess. It just needs to, we need to figure out the final slate. I think if we had a whittling down session, after staff had whittled down from 30 to 30, and then we got it down to 15 or 7, or from 30 to 15, and we got it down to the final 7. I think that would be the way to go. If we can do that according to the charter. Of course, we got to make sure we're legal all the way through.
Of course.
Yeah.
And I would also like to see that a member that missed a certain number of meetings in a row or certain meetings in a year is automatically just replaced or removed, just so that, obviously if there's a problem and somebody's in the hospital or something, but we want to make sure we don't get into a problem where you don't have quorums, you don't have enough people showing up. And hopefully all these people are really wanting to be on it and will understand the time commitment and will be there. But I think, we need to make sure that that's...
Would
that
you
it
want
doesn't
that?
become
Would you want
political.
that built in? Would you want that set forth expressly?
I think it needs to be built in. I think it's built in for a lot of our bylaws, for a lot of our other committees, and I think it needs to be built in.
I thought it was in here. I've been looking for it.
Bill, is that you?
That
You have
was,
another comment?
that was one comment.
You have another?
There's several things that, I guess first the question. I would assume that you're going to participate with this group to some extent. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. But in Article 7, staff, it said staff may attend but shall not, or shall serve in no official capacity. Could you define that a little bit? Make it clearer than what it is?
Yeah, I know what it is.
And what I'm getting at here too is how this whole group is going to come together and how it's going to be facilitated. And is that going to be the sole function of you with this organization, is just a facilitator?
And that is really for you all to determine, and we could put it in there. It says city staff may assist the members in the fulfillment of the committee's work.
Right.
After that. So if you wanted to put in there, change that, official capacity, I guess.
I don't think
I
that there was
don't know.
anything more intended by that except to simply suggest that staff serve in an advisory and guidance role and have no formal powers, decision-making, recommendation
But I would
powers.
certainly want staff's input and...
Absolutely.
Right.
So that the folks take that serious.
Similar to the way we would on any of our other boards.
Yeah.
One of the things that I had originally put forward was the potential of bringing in some hired expertise to be able to assist and guide this board. I don't know for sure that it's local, so we'd have to see where that expertise exists. But I think that considering the amount of money and what we're trying to accomplish here, having some of that outside expertise, at least in the beginning, may assist us.
I totally support that, because to me, this is you almost need somebody that's a professional that's not, from around here, far away, but can come in with a fresh set of eyes, have no connections with anybody or any preconceived notion to look to give their input.
And I would note that especially when it comes to appraising some of these lands for, especially for conservation easements, there's a subset of appraisers, for example, that specialize in conservation easements, that know how to value a property based on the development rights and taking those, buying those development rights.
And that may have to be a mix with more local appraisals too, to help come up with the values, and then they can adjust to what, what they are. Bill?
Yeah, further to that point, to Joe's point about bringing in folks out of this jurisdiction to be ad hoc or ex officio members. We did that with the Historic Preservation Commission, when we formed that, we brought in a couple of historically minded people, a couple of them from Alpharetta. So there is a precedent for doing that. I guess going back to the facilitation of these meetings, get into Article 3, the governance, and shall select officers, and may draft and adopt bylaws, or be subject to the internal rules of procedure of City Council. I see a long period, or a lengthy period, I guess, in just getting this group together, creating some bylaws and policies and procedures and all. Of course, it's all part of what needs to be done, but I guess maybe just to reinforce my point that you are involved in this since you have been from the very start, and it may take some more staff time in addition to you to help create just that structure to operate from. And it's a little more extensive and complicated than, say, the Historic Preservation Board or the Arts Council or something like that. And one last point, too, I had it circled here. In governance, Article 3, the last sentence, it says, volunteers shall not be compensated for any time or expenses associated with any other assignment. Now, we just passed a resolution to compensate board members on these other quasi legal boards and commissions.
Yeah, I don't know that I would have a
And see-
problem including this
See,
board.
but you did that under 4.11 of your charter, which specifically, and see, so on the one hand, you all don't want it to look like 4.11. Now, on the other hand, you want to compensate them under 4.11, and so that's where it's a challenge. And that's where I need some guidance, because 4.11 of your charter is where you're specifically authorized to compensate boards, your subsidiary boards and councils.
Okay. Well, I think it's a good point. I don't know that it's absolutely essential. I don't think anybody's going to serve or not because of.
It could be a lot of time. It could be a tremendous
Hey,
time.
It
commitment.
is going to be a big commitment.
I mean, so I'm fully aware that
And
a lot of
that being
citizens
said,
are working. Yeah.
And Kathy, we're going to have to, I'm going to assume we're going to have to be prepared as a staff and a council to monitor that and also make changes occasionally, because some people may volunteer and get involved and realize that they don't have the
Right.
time.
It's a lot of time.
Right.
Effort. So,
And I will be there, of course, to help, especially in the beginning with forming. I mean, anything that you want me to do, I would, with the policies and procedures and the setup, I could help with that and
you
guide
know,
them with that.
I would
however
say,
you want.
I think I'm hearing from the council, and I personally, would like it to be a slate, so it's not an individual pick. And I believe I'm hearing that from the council too. I would also like the ability, and maybe we can't define it now, but have, and go through Steve, but the staff's ability to add some professional advice or advisors or whatever in there that could help lead this group when necessary, that don't have any kind of interest in it.
Sure.
And then what else, Karen?
Well, and I think we ought to wait till we get all the applications, till we see whether or not we've got the expertise we need within the people that are
That's a good point.
applying.
Yep.
If not, then we definitely have to go get it somewhere.
Well,
So-
and what I was saying was had the ability.
Right, have the ability.
Give
But
them
I
the
also
authority.
think, we say they're gonna comply with the open meetings here, but I think a lot of people don't understand what that means, and I think we need to spell out the fact that they will have executive sessions, who that will be allowed to be in those executive sessions, and what their executive sessions are for, because,
Yeah.
well, they're gonna be talking about land acquisition most of the time, or a lot of the time when they're not talking about bylaws and all that, but when they talk about any kind of specific parcels, that's gonna be an executive session.
Correct. And so a citizen reading they're going to be subject to the Open Meetings Act may not understand.
May not
that-
understand that. So I really
that-
think
yeah.
we need to have a little bit more in there that says, this is when they're gonna have when they will be in, open meetings, this is when there's gonna be an executive session. These are the people that will be automatically in the executive session with them, and these are the other people who may be invited by if it's approved by a majority of the board members to be in the executive session or whatever, just so that you don't have, well, why is that person in and I'm not allowed in that executive session? We just want to get all politics out.
This is going to require a little training too.
Yeah.
So folks understand that. And I was going to bring this up, but this kind of leads into it. And, we have had some public comment about, videotaping, streaming the meetings and all, which I think we're all for. I know I definitely am, open and transparent. But there is going to be, the majority of the time these folks are going to be talking about specific parcels and, just like we would have to do in an executive session.
Sure.
Obviously, everything needs to be on record of any decisions that are made, but, there's going to have to be some training so that these folks realize most of the stuff they're going to be talking about is going to have to be behind closed doors, but that they can't speak about that and whatnot, until a decision is made, and then it won't formally, they'll have to come back out in public and, in public.
Candidly, Mr. Mayor, I mean, I believe that probably at the first formation meeting, there ought to be some fairly extensive training, lest there's, huh?
And do you know anybody can do that?
I know a guy that knows a guy. But I'm just saying, because of the importance of this, we do not want there to be any missteps, particularly with things as cut and dried as procedure, because that's all about confidence, and you really will only get one chance at showing confidence, and so that's.
And just for the audience, especially some of the young guys and the scouts here, what we're talking about is, as we're forming a committee that's looking at buying properties and purchasing, it's like anything. If everybody on the block knew that the city was interested in buying their property, all of a sudden they would raise the price on it. So as these discussions are going on and people are trying to pick, well, this would be a good property, this wouldn't, it really needs to be in confidence, because if word gets out, then everybody, then it would cost the taxpayers a whole lot more money. So all that has to be done in a public meeting. The actions have to be taken, but sometimes that's what we are allowed legally to talk about, buying property, or making offers or whatever, and keeping that behind closed doors so that, the prices don't go up. But now granted, once we make the decision what we want to do, this committee would have to come out to the public and explain what their action they're going to do and get approval there.
That's correct.
Go ahead, Karen, and then Bill.
But to me, when they go into executive session, we as council members should not be a part of that executive session. Absolutely.
It's their executive session.
It's their executive session. It's not ours. It's not an executive session we ought to be a part of unless we're having an executive session between the council and them.
Yeah.
So I think we need to make sure that that's all spelled out, that, this is their committee. When they're having their executive sessions, just like we wouldn't invite them into our normal executive sessions, they're not going to invite us into theirs, even if we happen to be in the meeting.
They can discuss their plan and actions, and then they can present it to us in a public meeting, and we'll hear it just like.
Or they can present it to us in an executive session if it's concerning a land acquisition thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. I mean, because really, if they come out and present it in an open session, then you've undone the bit. Yeah, so it'll have to still be.
But when they're just discussing,
Executive session.
specific, if they're discussing any specific parcels or locations or anything, we should not be part of that discussion at all until they have made a decision.
Absolutely. Okay.
I understand.
Bill?
Back on your point about bringing in experts, I would hope with this solicitation here, we'd be getting some applicants that had either environmental background, real estate attorneys, anything that would be applicable to this committee. If not, what comes to mind is the ethics board and the fact that we have a panel for the ethics board. And if we don't solicit that type of expert background in these applicants, possibly what needs to be part of discussion with your group then is to form a panel or create a panel of different experts in the fields.
And that's, to my point, to Bill's point, that's what I was saying earlier. And you guys are probably going to have to monitor it some too, to see how much we're going to need or not as we move forward. I mean, let's be honest. anybody that's a Milton citizen that's on that board could potentially have conflict of interest. Now, I know the intent is not there, but, you know, no matter where you live, obviously somebody could say, well, I'd rather that property close to me. I'd like to see a park versus over on the other side of town. So obviously that's the reason we have to have a broad, you know, a group and a slate, so there's no individuals. But also, you know, that's where I like the idea of having some outside folks in too, to be able to guide them and say, well, no, that for the overall city, that doesn't make as much sense. So.
And that's also why I wanted geographic representation amongst the districts as well. So the more even that is, I think you have lesser of that happening. So.
And there might be something under number 5, conduct of business, where it talks about they may establish and appoint representatives and committees, and the other one where it says they can have volunteers. We could, if you want, we could add probably under that section the ability to hire outside professionals to do some of these, you know, some of this work that could come up.
The only thing I would add to that,
Or the council.
but rather than the committee deciding that, more the staff,
Okay.
as well as the council, have some, you know, input
The
from
council,
the council as to whether we need, you know.
Well, we'd
You
have
guys,
to-
you
we
guys
have-
bring to us that, hey,
Right.
you know what, we might need this, and then we give some input on hiring some outside, not have the committee itself make that decision, because they may say they don't need it. I think Rick and then
Okay, I guess along the same line, as far as, so I understand the process as it's laid out, and we've had discussions. So once we get through the selection process, however we word it legally, so we have a representative panel from, or board members from the city of Milton, and then if we need to, we can add different people, but it's not going to be individual nominations where I'm going to find someone. We're going through the application process. That group then meets. They'd be signing non-disclosures. They'd go through, look at the goals of what we're trying to do with the green space bond for best use of dollars, looking within Milton where are the ideal properties. And then once they come up with where they think there is a property that they'd like to recommend, then that comes forward as part of land acquisition. They bring it forward as a board to the council in executive session as a separate meeting to say, we're recommending that this is a property that should be acquired. And then that's where the council would make the decision, similar to what we do today if we're looking at land acquisition. And then once that offer is made and it's accepted, then that's where it's made public.
So
Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there might be some clarification in the maybe some of the nuances of that, but generally, that is exactly the critical path that we follow.
Okay.
And so, yes.
And along with what we talked about earlier, just making sure, I think this really is going to require specialized training, even if we've got the competency, so people clearly understand, here is your role.
Yep.
Spelled out in a non-disclosure, not even suggest that, you know, it's something that they sign, just like when, you know, we sign things. You sign a non-disclosure. If you bring someone in as an expert to help out outside of this committee, then they would also be bound by signing like a non-disclosure if you're talking about individual properties.
And that's, it is in, we have something to that effect in number 3, governance, where they may be required to sign confidentiality agreements relating to proposed land transactions.
And I think to Ken's point, we're kind of setting some new ground here. It's not something we've done before. We're going to have to rely on some training. And, you know, we may not be able to think through everything right this second and try to second guess, but, you know, there's going to have to be some training, and you guys, if we pick the board and you guys sit down and, you know, you might have to come back and say, hey, we've learned this, or we need to tweak this, or adjust this, or whatever.
Couple thoughts on that. I mean, first of all, that's correct. I think that candidly, once we go over with them sort of the ethical and policy-based reasons for the confidentiality, it will terrify them to the point of not mentioning anything to anyone else, which is going to be my job. And no kidding. And then secondly, but really where this goes to, all kidding aside, is the individuals that are selected.
Right.
I just cannot emphasize enough that is key. All the rules, all the statutes, all the bylaws in the world don't matter and if you don't have people and individuals of integrity, and I know that we will, but I'm just saying to you, that's been my experience as well.
Thinking we need some of these young scouts in here.
Absolutely.
They
Listen,
probably do a
So,
good job.
so for today, we've got this before us. Do we need to make a motion to defer this? Because it sounds like it's not ready to be.
it's different than your vision.
Well,
so-
let me ask you, and Kathy, Steve, Stacy Carter, Ken, are you getting some feedback that you can,
Take care.
not have to go back to the drawing board, but maybe talk about some of this and.
I think it
adjust a little
sounds
bit?
like with what Ken's saying is, are we going to work under 4.11 here or not, or is there a way around that to do something different?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the divergence is on me. So that's where this divergence came from, because I'm going to default to 411. So what I need to do is, what I'll make express is that this is not a 411 board, and then I've taken notes as to what you want, the mandatory if you miss a certain number of meetings.
Right.
I might indicate, and Councilmember Thurman, what do you think about this, if the bylaws dictated that, but
That's
perhaps
fine.
let
That's-
them,
Right.
but sort of roll out the notion. What I have typically found is people are harder on themselves if they get the opportunity to set it than even the council might be, and they may set a more rigorous standard. Otherwise, I got it. I understand that you all want to nominate a slate en masse and then vote en masse. I understand that. I'm not crazy about it, but I'm having to divest myself from my 411 hat, so I got it. And that's, you all are the policymakers, and I respect that. Mentioned in the executive session, I get that as far as the open meetings, what that means. And then with respect to who, we'll put that in the bylaws, but I do think you're right. It needs to expressly provide. This group is going to be spending some time in executive
They're
session.
going to be.
They're just going to be. So, Mr. Mayor, yes, the answer is I have enough to make some tweaks, but to Councilmember Thurman's point, I am not recommending you vote on this tonight, because I would be afraid that we'd piecemeal it and I'd miss something. So.
Okay, Bill had something.
One fine point that came up, and that was about hiring consultants and whether or not we as council would have to approve that. I think under the normal purchasing policies that the city manager has his discretion, he could probably do it, but I guess it would be a matter of where the funds would come from, and I would assume it would come from this $25 million fund.
Yeah, I think the bond proceeds could legitimately be spent for those sorts of experts. So I do think that that's part of the actual implementation of the bond. I will tell you, of course, the city staff have, and the city manager may have some appropriations or expenditure power, and that's fine. But my vision for this committee is they're not going to have any unilateral independent expenditure power that is separated from the city manager or the council. That's it. So.
Okay. Darren?
One last thing, before we defer the actual resolution. Is there anything that we need, any reason we can't go ahead and have the application out there so that we can start looking at who we might be getting in before we actually have to do the resolution? Do we have to wait?
You have to form
So right now, Ken has had about 2.5 hours to review it. I'm assuming that wasn't enough, considering he spent the last hour and a half in traffic. So he has the application. We're ready to go on it. I just want to make sure that we haven't crossed any legal thresholds in any of the questions we've asked. And
But that doesn't have to be approved, but the application itself is not something we actually have to approve.
No, ma'am.
As soon as you've looked it over, we can go ahead and get the application
Yes.
out there, go ahead and start getting people to fill it out and get it back to us, and then we can approve the resolution at the
Yes.
next council meeting.
Yes.
Okay. All right, I'll open up for possibly a motion for deferral, but with the information that the council shared.
I'll make a motion that we defer agenda item number 17-055 until the March 6th council meeting. Can you get it done by then?
Absolutely.
Okay.
second.
Okay, we've got a motion for deferral to March 6th from Councilmember Thurman, a second by Councilmember Morrig. Any discussion?
I think Rick has the discussion question.
No, that's fine. I
Second, yeah.
no,
All
I'm good.
All
I'm
in
good.
favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? That's unanimous.
Do you all want to go over the application and see if you have any comments or questions about the application, the draft application at this point?
I was good with it.
Yeah, we would definitely want to, whether we want to look at it right now, we can
I think we
talk
just
about
can
it
take
right
and
now.
look at it
Now, or
and
we
get back
can-
with you.
Yeah, or everybody can take it and give some comments. Let's do that.
Okay.
Well,
Second.
Okay.
No.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Move on to reports. Anybody want to report anything, Matt?
Two things. The Arbor Day was great with the Christmas tree going up. I thought that it was great seeing Bill and Karen and Rick there, and Rick did a great job as Mayor Pro Tem, and so it was great seeing that though. But a lot of people were very excited about that in Crabapple. We saw that, and to the Scouts, get your Eagle. All right, I'm an Eagle Scout as well myself, and don't let anything stop you. Promise me that.
Okay.
That's it.
Anybody else? All right, staff, you got any reports other than what's published here?
The only thing I'd like to add before we get into the staff reports, the Milton Citizen app, which we've talked about, is it is live. It just hasn't been publicized. However, I think as of probably about 6 o'clock this evening, it has been. There's a story going out in the Milton Herald tomorrow regarding it. If you haven't downloaded it yet,
This one?
yeah, that's it.
That's it.
So rather than me read the newspaper to you, it's that's the app that's going to be out. It's going to allow our citizens to be able to enter all kinds of information into our workflows regarding codes, different types of information regarding street conditions, you name it. They can enter that information and it goes directly into our workflow system. They get emails back indicating that we've got it. They get emails further indicating when it's closed. They can go back. They could check on their request to get a status updates if it's something that requires more than a day or so. In addition to that, there are a few more capabilities that are currently built in, and we plan to expand on it. You're able to now get the calendar off the app. So if you want to see what the agenda is for the evening, or even the packet for that matter, you can now get that right off that app. You don't have to go searching through, get online and start searching through our systems anymore. It's a 2-click, and you're able to see what the agenda is for any meeting we have going on. You'll be able to connect to our Facebook and Twitter that way as well. This is kind of just the beginning of this app. That's why we called it the Connect Milton. I'm sorry, what is it? Probably not a good time to forget the name. Connect Milton, and because we envision this being a portal for our citizens to be able to interact with their government.
Okay. Rick?
So Steve, when you talked about they can track it and they'll get updates, et cetera, will it also allow someone else to go on, any citizen, to see what's in the workflow? Like if someone said there's an issue with the street and we need this repair, is that something that would be visible then to other citizens, or is it just going to be individual communication from them to staff?
Right. Currently, you would have to know the service request number that was identified with that specific request. So you couldn't go on and see the entire workflow that we have in our work order system, but you would be able to check on your specific request.
Just on yours. So you potentially could get, with the same issue, you could get multiple requests from different people coming in on the same pothole or the same issue with a corner. Would you then just assign that same number?
We could, and so on the back end, we see that as a multiple request at the same location, and
Right.
it combines those together in our workflow.
So you wouldn't be responding, you could respond en masse to the people that
That's
had
correct.
brought it forward, but keep it under one so we're not creating multiple things.
That's correct.
Okay.
And one of the goals of this is to have single entry, so it doesn't come in from one system and then require staff time to now take that and enter it into another system.
Right.
We're actually employing the goodwill of our citizens to enter that information now for us. And in fact, I just used it recently on a pothole on Freemanville Road. Got out, took a picture of it, sent it over, and within 2 days it was filled. So I got all my emails and all that kind of stuff. I'm really pleased with the way it works. One thing I'd like to add.
Anything to do with the fact that you were a city manager? Or?
I'd like
Maybe
to.
you get priority.
Steve Crocott, city manager?
I would like to say that that had no bearing on it. The only thing I want to add is that this app can be tweaked, and we're actually opening it up in a manner so to make sure that the user experience is something that people are looking for. So One of the things you're going to see back on the email is if you have any recommendations for improvements, things along those lines, we want that fed into us as well, so we can make sure that we've got the experience correct.
Great, thank you.
Okay, well, where is the dead deer pickup request on the app?
They still call Mayor.
That did come up in conversation.
Because that was what that seems to be my number one request, that everybody calls me and says, there's a dead deer. It's like, okay.
Well, the intent is, as we modify this, and we can see the requests that are coming in, we can adjust the app to those types of requests.
So we can add a dead animal removal
So
request?
Rather than come up with a list of 10 task orders that we believe are going to be used, what we're going to do is let the users submit those, and we can see which ones are actually being submitted to the app, and we can tailor it to those types of submittals.
So now it just goes under a general complaint.
Correct.
Yeah, so you're on it, I assume.
Yes, I downloaded it.
It is. Yes, you, and that's what.
Because I can
that's what the
bet
majority
we
of them
have
are.
more dead animal removers than we do graffiti issues.
Yes, that was also a conversation we had. So this is, fortunately, that's not one of our biggest issues here in the city of Milton. So we're looking. This is still going to be tweaked to fit us based on what we start seeing the throughput be.
And can Karen get on the automatic update for every dead animal removal?
No, I don't.
The only thing, if I could, I just want to add, Mayor, I know this is going to be a shock to anybody here, but we have the Milton Mayor's Run this Saturday, 8 to 11 a.m., right outside. We're all excited for that. So looks long range, looks like we're going to have good weather.
Yep.
So
it's a great event that's grown every year, so get a lot of folks here.
and a great cause. So.
Do you need any volunteers still to help out, like passing out water, that type of thing, or are you fully staffed?
I can't say that we ever have enough volunteers, so
Okay.
if I'm not going to turn away a volunteer.
Okay.
Put it this way: if you don't want to run, you can hand out.
Well, that's what I was
Yeah,
thinking.
exactly.
I don't want you picking me up on this side of the road, so I'll hand out water.
Okay.
Any stakes in this race?
Talk about that after.
For the winners. They get steak dinner. All right. Staff reports.
Who's our first one up here?
Yep, Kathy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Community Development currently has three major projects that we're tracking. The first is the creation of a master plan, our placemaking plan for downtown Milton Crabapple. It went to the Planning Commission in January, but subsequent to that meeting, we have determined that an additional community meeting will be scheduled, and we will be holding it in our new city hall in Crabapple. So we're going to wait till after we move into that city hall building before we hold that public meeting. After that public meeting, the intent is then to bring it on to council at a workshop meeting and then on to you for your review and possible approval. The second project that we're in the midst of is the update to the tree preservation ordinance. We did have a stakeholder meeting on January 23rd. We have planned a tree canopy workshop, and we've tentatively scheduled it for 2 weeks from tonight. So tomorrow we will be sending out meeting notices to the stakeholder committee on that workshop. Subsequent to the workshop, we hope to then develop a draft ordinance to go on to the Planning Commission and then ultimately on to you for your review. Lastly, we are working on the creation of a unified development code. You did approve the contract for that. That is a long-term initiative. We're estimating about 16 months for that. And in essence, what we will be doing will be taking all of our codes, taking out all the redundancies, reformatting them into a much cleaner volume so that they're much more user-friendly for not only for staff but certainly for the community as well. So that initiative will be starting soon, but I did want to get the other two projects moving along before we started this, since all three projects are rather large and very time-consuming for everyone involved. So we want to sort of make them move along timely. In terms of text amendments, we are still working on the steep slope standards. Carter has been working with the Planning Commission on that. We're taking a revised amendment back to them at their meeting tomorrow night, and then the intention is, should it be approved through the Planning Commission, that we would then move it along to you at your first meeting in March. Lastly, we're looking at revisions to the plat process, and we have several text amendments that's tracking along with this initiative, and we are looking for the Planning Commission to review them at their March meeting, and then should that be approved by them in March, it would then come to you for your workshop in April, and then for your final review at the third meeting of April. That is it.
Okay. Any questions?
questions?
For Kathy? All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Chief?
Good evening. Since taking the reins of the department a few short weeks ago, I've been taking some time and have enjoyed getting to know the personnel within the police department and throughout the community. Been taking advantage of some time with the officers to do personal interviews with each member of the department in order to better understand the challenges that they face and their concerns. So that's been a very enlightening process that's going very well. As you know, Mr. Krokoff left the department in excellent shape, which makes my job easier and continuing to drive forward a lot of the strategic plans that were already in place, as well as implement our new strategic plans for 2017. One such initiative that's already in place is a crash reduction strategy. Includes a three-tiered approach of education, enforcement, and engineering. Officers have been focusing on two major crash corridors, which is Highway 9 and Arnold Mill Road, in an effort to reduce the traffic accidents at those locations. Year-to-date statistics show a 10% decrease in accidents throughout the city, so we have some early promise in our plans there. There's also been a 28% increase in individuals arrested for DUI, so the officers are out there really taking ownership of the issues there. I'd also like to take a moment to congratulate our Milton Police Department Explorer Post 2570 on a recent win at Winterfest in Gatlinburg. Winterfest is an annual event. It's hosted by the Boy Scouts of America and reported this year one of the largest turnouts with over 3,300 individuals in attendance. Attendees represented a variety of posts from the Southeast, including the Boy Scouts, fire, police, and EMS explorers. So 85 of which were competing in law enforcement events. And your Milton Police Department, Post 2570, competed in 6 events and won first place in the felony and traffic stops. So we're very impressed with that. This is a credible accomplishment. I've had a lot of experience working with explorers. This particular post, not yet a year old and no prior experience in explorers. It was organized in March 2016 with a group of 14 explorers. Over 18 active now, with 7 additional youth interested in joining. So a lot of promise there. So a lot of good things going on internally and externally, and it's a privilege to serve. Thank you.
Thank you. And welcome, along with your family. Okay, Bernadette.
Hello again. As you know, business licenses are due on March 31st, and our staff is working diligently to make sure that we have someone available at both this location and the new location, just in case any of the business owners have not gotten the note that we'll be moving to Heritage Walk. Currently, we have about approximately 38% have already renewed, and we're just waiting on the rest of them. We do still have our formal process in place. As they do not renew by the 15th, we'll give them a formal warning of April, and then if they don't comply by the 15th of May, we'll send out a written citation. So we're still following through with that consistency with all the businesses, as we've spoken about in past meetings. Finance is also working on an online application to give the opportunity for businesses to apply and renew online so they don't have to come up here. And we're working through all the different ins and outs of that program. So hopefully coming forth next year, we'll see that working and online. Currently, we've completed all of our field work, and we've submitted our edit of the CAFR to the auditors, so we will see coming forth hopefully in mid-March the issue of the CAFR. Also, we're working currently on our budget adjustments, so that'll be coming forth to you as well. Other than that, I believe that's pretty much it for finance. Is there any questions?
Okay. Any questions?
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. There's no other, anything else from staff, we'll move into executive session to discuss land acquisition. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to adjourn to executive session to discuss land acquisition.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Do I have a motion that we reconvene?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to reconvene. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That passes unanimous. Sudi, we passed unanimous to reconvene. Now, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That passes unanimous too.